Thank you very much for this introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you also, Colleen, for this very insightful talk. I think I'll be happy to build on it. And it was really great to have you talk about all these very important things. Especially, I think that you talked about the need to put more emphasis on intentional, deliberate promotion of interpersonal relationships in schools as a basis for creating something that would promote peace education in its broader sense. And I think that this talk is really related to this idea. Let me try to share my screen. Okay, can you see it?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. So this talk is actually I called it the dance of love and fear, an emotional organizational perspective on peace education. And I also want to, we did not coordinate this in advance, but I also wanted to talk about what we teach our students about the world and how it operates in explicit ways and also in implicit ways, because I think that's at the bottom of what peace education wants to do or aims to do. And this talk was inspired by a very meaningful keynote that I've heard in July 2019 by Steve Leventhal. And he said, in this dance of love and fear, in which fear seems too often to get the upper hand, what would it take to move the world even just 1 inch from fear to love? And I think this really taps into what peace education tries to do in the broader and deeper sense. I'll bring my perspective on it, which is, of course, biased by my research, but I think this is what we're trying to get to. Two main theoretical basics for what I'm going to talk about. One is attachment theory, which is an interpersonal theory for interpersonal relationships, but also for development, and it seems to be related to a host of phenomena in human existence and life. And the other is related to organizational psychology, and specifically to what you can call the chain effect or the ripple effect. And specifically about schools, it's about students are affected by their teachers, and teachers are affected by their principals. And of course it goes on, but this is as far as I will go about in this talk. Two major elements that I will talk about are a sense of security and creating a sense of security for students and for teachers. And the other is openness. And I think both are required in order to learn or be able to resolve conflicts, whether they are intrapersonal, interpersonal, or intergroup. So this is what I will talk about. So some basics. What is this theoretical framework, attachment theory? Just very quickly, attachment theory suggests that there's an evolutionary need for human beings as they are, for others who to have others who take care of us. We need that in order to survive in infancy, but also later on in life, until adulthood. Bowlby called it from cradle to grave. You need others who can support you. Hopefully you have others who are stronger and wiser, and then you can lean on them, and they can provide a safe haven in times of need, and a secure base for exploration. And a secure base for exploration when you have the opportunity. I think this image is something that really makes it, makes you get the feeling of it. And we see that a lot in parks or wherever we go, where the child, moves away from his parents when he feels that, he knows that whenever there's something scary or something like that, he can always go back to them. And as adults, I think maybe the best connection that we can make is when something really upsetting or very happy, by the way, happens to us. Who's the first person that we call? Who's the one who makes us, have the courage to do something that we haven't done before? And our relationships with these figures also shape and frame the way we think about ourselves and about the world. And I hope you see where this is going. So there are different attachment orientations, but what we're interested in this talk are the secure ones. And so if you manage to have someone that you know they care for you, right? You know they're sensitive, responsive, and you can, you know, rely on them to be there for you, then you develop a positive perception of yourself. You feel valued, right? Someone knows about you, and you feel appreciated. You have a better chance of feeling efficient and having self-efficacy. You also have a positive view of others, that others are competent, responsive, they're relatively or generally good-hearted. These people who have a secure attachment also have satisfying long-term relationships. They have higher well-being, adaptive coping with challenges and with new situations, which is important for us, and also a higher on openness, which I will talk about in a minute. So these effects actually are very relevant to intergroup conflict or conflicts in general, where you have to create or have some thoughts about people who are different from you, who are not what you're used to or behaving in another way. So people who have secure attachment, and also, by the way, situational attachment security, you can prompt or prime people to be more secure for a shorter time. And when you do that, then you see that people become less biased about other groups, about out groups. They become less aggressive toward out-group members. They become more pro-social, more helpful to someone from an out-group, for example, who comes as a new student to the university. They become less hostile. So this is something that I think is very relevant for us to know, that once we manage to create this sense of security, then we resolve a lot of the problems that come with this sense of insecurity. So actually what it means is that when we have this instilled internal sense of security, then we feel more comfortable living on our comfort zone, and in some ways we do it in a more adaptive way. And I want to argue that this happens as a personal process, but also as an interpersonal process related to interpersonal conflicts, but also intergroup conflicts. So as an intergroup process. So I think it means that, or if you want to kind of use a metaphor of that. So when we have someone from an outgroup, or when we feel some kind of a threat, or someone who we don't know, or a new situation, then we are kind of on the edge of this, place where we have to make a leap of faith in some way. And if we have this sense of security, then there's a better chance of us coping and knowing that there will be someone there to save us and to help us if we need. And I think in every challenge, there is usually also an opportunity, sometimes not the opportunity we planned for or we wanted, but there is. And looking at the challenge and seeing maybe also the threat, but also the opportunity, is something that can be very helpful in intergroup relationships, and also in relationships, in interpersonal relationships with others that we're threatened by in some way, or that are new to. So I think the main issue, and this is also something that Colleen has discussed, is how do we increase students' sense of secure attachment? How do we increase their sense that they have someone who cares for them really in school? So first of all, I want to say that we have a study. We conducted a study that actually examined the associations between students feeling that they are cared for, that their teacher, their homework room teacher, cares for them. And that was significantly associated with students' self-esteem and school engagement, and also with their well-being. This was, I think we had about 650 students and about 33 teachers. But I think what's interesting to see about this study is that we had a non-significant association between teachers' reports about their caring and students' reports about how, does the teacher care for you? So we were, So how can we make students feel that they are more cared for? And what we saw was that what was significantly associated with students' feelings that their teachers care for them is teachers' self-reported sense of meaning. So teachers reported about their sense of meaning, and students reported about how to what extent the teacher cares for them. And these two things were closely linked. And what we think is that teachers' beliefs about, how important their job is, how meaningful it is, how much impact they can actually have on students, is really linked to how much impact they actually have on students in a positive way. Because when they have this higher sense of meaning, then the students feel, that they matter for them. Another thing that we know or we think that matters is teachers' capacity to actually help children and students and actually be sensitive and responsive for them. Because even if they think that they should or they can, then they do not always have the capacities. And in this, I have to make a comment here that teachers' jobs are very difficult. Of course, we know that there's a lot of burnout. They have a lot of stress. Teachers are among the most stressful employees that we have, along with about two more occupations. So it's a very difficult job. And how do you, manage to be responsive and available and within all of these challenges? So just one example about a model that we have that suggests, how can we build these capacities in teachers or help them build these capacities. And this is about mindfulness, but again, there are others as well. And this model, for example, shows that when teachers' mindfulness increases, then we have, and we have some supporting data for this. I won't go into this because of the time, but so when teachers' mindfulness increases, their self-centeredness, their thoughts about themselves all the time, that decreases, that they become more, they call it decentered. And then their capacity, their ability to feel empathy and compassion, and also to regulate their emotions in an adaptive way, that increases. And that increases their ability to have, high quality teacher-student relationships for the benefit of the students, but also for the benefits of the teachers, because when they have these relationships, that's more rewarding, and they also have less conflict, less discipline problems, and so this is helpful for everyone. Again, if the teachers manage to, regulate their emotions and not, yell on students when they are very annoying, or, be empathic to them despite, the problems and so on. So this is one way that's kind of internal in order to cope with the difficulties and build capacities. We have other ways, which I will not discuss today, but they're generally all included, or most of them are included also in cell capacities. And I think peace education is also part of it, but maybe in a kind of more distant way. And again, as Colleen mentioned, I think we now talk a lot about the context, the broader context in which the teacher works. So as with the students, that students are, each over there, but they all have a relationship also with their peers, and their sense of belonging is very important. Then also teachers have that. They're also human, right? And we know that attachment security is a human need. So what do we know about building, or helping teachers build their capacities and their sense of security in this kind of broader context? And we have some initial research about that, but there's not, or let's say that research about these elements is more difficult to conduct, but there still is. For example, if we talked about the importance of teachers' sense of meaning when they feel that their work is meaningful, then their students feel that they are cared for. So principals' sense of meaning was strongly associated to teachers' sense of meaning. So when principals feel that their work is more meaningful, then the teachers also feel that their work is more meaningful. So we see kind of a ripple effect here. And in these schools, the teachers also see that they are more caring for their students, and they have better relationships for their students. So we can see that the principals have an effect, a significant effect on what's happening in the school, in this sense that they lead who they are, and their own beliefs and personality kind of reflects on what everyone else is doing. And in this context, I also want to mention, in general, something that which is becoming more and more prevalent in the positive education I see in schools, which is the whole school approach. The approach that should suggest that if you want to make a change, or if you want students to feel better, then you also need teachers to feel better. And in order to have that, you also need the principal to feel better. So, you know, it's not enough. The more you manage to do this in the organization as a whole, then the better, or in the most and the more sustainable the change will be. And I will not again go in depth into that, but there are different approaches to what the whole school change should be about. But the change, when you make it and it's thorough and it's led by the principal, and it's not just about, you know, how in a certain time, where in a certain subject or in a certain hour, but more about organizational habits, what happens between classes, what happens in staff meetings, how are they held, how do people talk to each other, how do people receive feedback from the principal, from each other, from the teacher. These things are all interconnected. They're all related to the school culture, which really has a large impact on what happens in the school, both in terms of sense of belonging and security, and also in terms of academic achievement. The last thing I think I want to say, which is, or almost the last point that I want to make, is that these elements are important not only for peace education and for reducing aggression and increasing adaptive conflict resolution, but also are essential for learning. If we're talking about a sense of security, and which enables you to feel that you have a safe haven, right, in time of need, and also a secure base for exploration, for trying new things, for leaving your comfort zone, and openness and kind of curiosity, right, passion to learn something beyond what you already know, to leave your comfort zone. These two elements are important for almost every learning that we do. It's the basis for development. There's a lovely paper by Finney and Collins from 2014 about how they help us thrive in good times and also in bad times. And they're the basis.
2 more minutes, Shiri.
Okay, thank you. And they're the basis for developing our 21st century competencies, which are related to, again, creativity, which requires a lot of openness and curiosity, and also being empathic to others, listening to others, being a good team member, and so on. One last thing that I want to say, and I think my time is almost up, is that in all of these things, we have to pay a special consideration, special attention to at-risk populations, because students from these populations have less of an advantage of enjoying a secure base and a sense of security in their home or in other environments. And then their need to receive this kind of sense of security in school is much stronger. The threats that they are challenged by are a lot of times much more difficult than, you know, those of other students. Extreme poverty, safety issues, very, you know, essential survival issues even sometimes, but also internal ones in terms of self-value, self-esteem, feeling that they are capable of doing things, feeling that others have expectations from them. These are things that these students are challenged by much more than others. And so I think this population should get kind of a special focus when we talk about, you know, providing them with a sense of security, and also with a sense of kind of openness and passion to learn and new things and to leave their comfort zones. And I will just say very briefly that we had a study about these, you know, challenged or underprivileged populations, and we saw that teachers caring really matters for their, and can really increase their resilience in the longer term, even after they graduate. Thank you for the time, for your attention, and also for the invitation here.